In the last video, we stopped at the design of the view. I remembered I identified that at the beginning of after we had designed the view models, we went ahead to run the application, and we had the interface to start creating a new transaction head. So, and I said that the existing presenter must first be located, and that was where I went to the AGAS presenters project, and I located the presenter for the whole of this implementation. Unfortunately, we say that this presenter is actually a bad design presenter because of it's not doing single responsibility principle. It is the single presenter that is in charge of every single activity happening on this page. So it is a very busy presenter, unlike the other pages that had each presenter file was a separate one. So what we don't have any choice, if not that the other option is for us to rewrite the logic directly and hit the database, but we'll work with that. So this is the presenter, right? And the next thing I want us to do now is that in the closing of the last video, I remember saying that we need to get the view interface and implement it. But one of the mistakes I made was that we are implementing it in the wrong place. So if you watch the last video, you will see that this is where I kept the file. But right now I'm going to delete the file because that is not where we're going to implement this. So the next thing I want to do is that I want to bring, okay, very importantly, in the last video, I used this controller, the transaction head view model list view controller, to intercept this button, the new button. So it is very important I let you know that anytime you subscribe to an event anywhere, mostly all the events will cascade from the unactivated event. So you need to make sure you unsubscribe from those events at the undeactivated event of the controller, and is essentially copying that same code and putting minus here instead of plus. So that is very, very important. The framework providers have said that not doing this can result into memory leaks, which can start making your application to have unexpected behaviors. So remember, any subscription to an event must be unsubscribed on the undeactivated event. All right. So the next thing I want to do now is, once you hit this view, I want it to be populated with the existing data that is in the system. If I go to the backend, this is this table, right? So that should be the first thing we need to do. So once you come to the transaction head view, you see the existing ones. So I need to, what it means is that the controller of this page is where I need to do the work. So I'm going back to the code, and this is the controller of the page, because it was from there I implemented the intercept that opened my own new transaction view model rather than the default one. If you watch the former video. So right now, I am going to implement the view and the presenter on this controller. And what do I mean by that? I will go to the presenter and I will take this interface of the view, because the responsibility of the presenter is to get data and store it. So every interaction with a database must go through the presenter, and the presenter needs a view to interact with. So this is the interface for the view. We will now take this interface and go to our controller and implement it. Now, this is a very busy interface. Like I said, it is a violation of single responsibility principles. You can see we are just going to put stock placeholders to some of the fields because we don't need them. So I'm going to define a private dynamic field. We'll call it any data placeholder. Microsoft was magnanimous enough to give us this data type so it can contain anything. Then, okay, let me start using it as console. We want to implement all these interfaces. Now, what this means is that this is the view. This is the presenter talking to the view. So it's talking to it through this interface. So like this first one is a set. Anytime the presenter encounters an error, it's going to write through this error. So you are expected to, in this case, we are going to propagate the error. So anytime the presenter gives us an error, we will raise it. Then now, this is the view that contains what we want to display in this list. So we're going to use this code. This is where we're going to write the code that will connect what the presenter is giving us to the UI. But before we do that, every other thing here we do not need. Unfortunately, we can't delete them because the interface specification will not be met and it will give us error. So that is the work of this dynamic placeholder. So for anything I don't need, because in this interface I only just need these records to come to this here. So I am going to nullify every other thing. Here I'll put 0 here since it's an int, and I will say placeholder equals to value. So I'm going to copy this for every set, use it for every set. So get here, get empty string, description, empty string, is, we don't need it, this, zero, this. So for every view that we're going to eventually design in the web part to do these things, we're going to be using the same interface. Like I said, is not in compliance with single responsibility principle, but we'll use it like that. then the logged on user. I know it doesn't actually require it, at least I know in the implementation of the presenter, but this is what will normally be in any of the interface that asks for this particular information. Yes. So we are done. Now, if I remind you that in the business object, what we have is a transaction view head view model. So we will take the what we're going to do now is to write the logic that is going to feed this thing to the UI. So where do we start from? We declare a list of view model and we call it new list. Sorry, we what I want to do was to write logic here that will so, okay. So what I need to do, so this is what I need to do. I now describe a list of which list just the name of a variable. Now, since I'm returning, the presenter is returning a list, so I'll say for each item in value, because value is a list, I want to create a new record right? And I want to be able to see the new record. Code is equals to item the code the new record description is equals to item dot description. So and normally the view dot connection source connection dot I want to clear if there's any data there. I need to clear it, right? Then so what it means is that I don't use this list. So this is essentially what I've done. Once the presenter gives us by calling this function, because the presenters want to call this function, we clear any list that is existing and we run through the list again, giving it back to the view collection source at the end of the day. So um, this is what we need to tell the presenter. And when the presenter calls us back, this is what we need to do. So let us set up the presenter now. And all we need to do is come here, define a private variable of type this and call it presenter. And like I said, the presenter requires, in some instances, some other parameters to be passed in. So I'm aware I used those same type in this. So this is what I was trying to get to. These are some of the things that the presenter needs in situations where the presenter needs more than the view as parameter. So we come to the initialize event. This is where we are going to initialize the presenter. This is the database. This is an encapsulation of the repository pattern, which requires the database to be passed into it. Then we can now initialize the presenter. It requires two things. The view, since we have implemented the view on this controller, so we can pass in this to resolve, then we need to pass in the record. So presenter is good to go once this controller is initialized. It's also initialized. So on the activation of the controller, we now want to say presenter dot init form. Now, calling this method is what will trigger the presenter in the internal implementation of this. Triggering of this, it is supposed to now have an effect on this function. So once we call init form, the presenter will call us back by giving us the list of transaction head already existing in the system. So by doing this, it is expected that the view will now be populated with data. So let me function F interface.